Hi, this is Paul. I am currently in my mother's basement. I am not covered with Cheetos dust. My mother's upstairs watching the Jets and the Steelers. I was just watching with her and figured I could post a video for tomorrow morning. The video I'm going to post is Rafe Kelley's presentation at the Northwestuary conference. Now, this was a huge one. Rafe was so transparent in this presentation. His wife and his kids were present for that. It was a super vulnerable, super risky presentation, and it really powerfully moved the entire conference. I just finished the estuary retreat at my sister's place in Connecticut. That also was powerful. Different, of course. We didn't have any big speakers or anything like that. It was just basically 2 days of sitting around and talking and talking and talking. My sister would come through, she'd bring the food in for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and she'd be like, they just sit there and talk and talk and talk. We could have used some Rafe Kelley movement, but we had some cold weather the first couple of days, and my sister's place is pretty rustic, so not a lot of heat. Told people to dress in layers, but it was really good. And again, it was by the last day of the retreat. It was it was a very powerful meeting, and I think people were able to say a bunch of things that they really wanted and needed to say and share, and it was something. But with this Rafe Kelley presentation, you'll see. I haven't watched it yet on video. Rafe didn't want to use a mic. I don't know how well Jess was able to capture the sound. But again, it was Rafe's presentation was part of what made that event so very special. So, yep, I'll just put the whole thing right now and leave a comment. Let me know what you think.
Can everybody hear me if I project my voice like this? Excellent. Thank you guys for welcoming me here. Thank you for having me come and speak. I wasn't told too much about what to speak about. The theme of this conference is encounter. So what does that mean precisely? I didn't know, but it evoked for me the sense of the stuff that I work on all the time, which is our relationship to reality. How do I encounter the world when I do parkour? How do I encounter the world in the way that I relate to people? And more recently, how do I encounter the world in relationship to the transcendent? So I want to tell you guys two stories today. One is a story about parkour, which is a practice that I've done for 19 years. And the other is going to be a story about my marriage. And I think they're both really stories about the power of faith. And I think that they interact, hopefully, in an interesting way. So I want you guys first to imagine with me, I'm up here, I'm standing on a branch. It's about this big around. I'm 25 feet off the ground. Across from me, about 8 feet down, and 8 feet across and 4 feet down is another branch. It's about that big, and there's some branches behind it that I can catch with my hands. So I feel really secure that I can land there and not hurt myself. But the branch that I'm landing on is sloped. So there's this little bit of fear in me that if I jump, somehow my feet will slip and I'll slide down this branch and take this 25-foot fall. So I've looked at this jump for 3 years and thought, I know that I can do this. I really want to do this, but it's so terrifying and intimidating. But today, I've hired my videographer to come out and film it for my latest video project. I'm going to do this jump. And for some insane reason, I don't know why, I also invited Beth and the kids to come play with me at the park while we're doing this. So there's a branch above the branch that I'm actually going to jump off from. So I get to sit on this branch and look out at the jump and think about what I'm going to do. So I'm sitting there. And I think, okay, it's time to jump. I know I can do this, I'm going to do this, I'm committed to doing it. And I stand up. And I'm trying to look at the branch, but I just cannot help but looking at the abyss below me and thinking about what happens if I fall, right? And my heart starts racing and my breath is pounding and I just sit back down. And as I'm sitting there, I hear Keir giggling in the background, playing with his mom. And I think about how I really don't want to die because I want to be around for him and for her and for the rest of them. And I ask myself, like, okay, well, why am I doing this? Am I really courting death, or what am I doing here? And the wind blows through the leaves. And the sun is shining through, and I'm sitting there confronting this terror. And then there's this moment where it just eases off. It's just not there anymore. And I stand up, and all of a sudden it's like, there's nothing there anymore. There's only the jump. And when I jump, it's as if I've already done the jump. It's as if the jump is not something that I do. It's something that happens through me, and all I have to do is open the door and walk through. And so I do this jump. And I land on the other side safely. I do a rapid climb down. The videographer's up in the tree with me. He climbs down and gives me a huge hug and a high five. And it's joyful. It's really joyful. And you can watch a video of it, and I think it's beautiful. And it's a memory that I think I'll carry with me the rest of my life. I'll remember. It's one of the best memories I have of his laughter when he was 3, which was one of the most precious things that I ever got to experience. And I'll remember what that breeze felt like, and I'll remember the sound of it as it rattled the tree, the leaves, and I'll remember the light as it poured in. So when I look at that jump, you could say, wow, that's an impressive athletic feat. And, thank you if they think that. You can say that made a great clip for YouTube, and that's true too. But I think when I really consider why I pursue these things, it has to go deeper. And I have always been the type of person who's wanted to pursue it down and down and down. And so when I think about what happens when I do that jump, I think if I truly just study what happened in that moment, it has implications all the way down to my metaphysics. It tells me about my epistemology. It tells me about my ontology. And ultimately, it has opened me up to a spirituality. So I went to that tree for 3 years, and I climbed that tree. And I looked at that jump, and I said, that jump can be done. That is a real potential jump. And I didn't feel ready to do it, but I knew it was there. And it was poking at me and prodding at me for 3 years to come do it. I think that's so profound that I can look at something like a potential jump, and it is a real thing, right? I cannot drill down into the atomic structure and show you where that jump is. But I've looked at a jump and said that jump is potentially real thousands of times and discovered that when I tried it, I could do it. And sometimes I've looked at a jump and said, that jump is potentially real, and I've tried it and I couldn't do it. And to me, you can't actually account for that well without a metaphysics of realism. Because if the jumpability of a jump was just a name that I gave to it, then anything I named a jump should be a jump, but it's not. Right? I can't construct it out of whole cloth. It's there in the world for me to see, and it's not simply material. Every jump is a literally different expression of a bunch of different pieces of matter. It's a slightly different architecture. And I'm different every time that I approach it. And yet somehow, jumpability is a real thing. Right? J.J. Gibson, the great ecological psychologist, talked about these ideas of affordances. The world is actually laid out for us as structured affordances, and that I think is only now being understood by a very few people, as that goes all the way back to Plato and realism. The world is full of real things. And those real things, they have this potential to call to us, right? Why do I go do the jump? I do the jump because it's beautiful. I do the jump because it's beautiful. And so I can access beauty. And I have a relationship to being. And I have kind of a way of perceiving that world. And the other thing is, I can do the jump or I cannot do the jump, which means that it is either true or false. So at the most base level, every day when I go out and engage with my practice, I get to discover that true is a real thing. Right? It's not just some semantic content that is coherent. It's a physical, embodied aspect of reality. So parkour, I feel like, has taught me an enormous amount about the depths of reality. And it's helped me, I believe, be a virtuosic person in many ways. And I have this beautiful woman who's over there who saw that in me and saw all the ways in which I could cultivate that beauty, and she loved that. But it wasn't enough to help me love her the way that she needed to be loved to understand that she was truly loved. I bring people into these events where they experience the profoundness of their capacity to relate to the world and to relate to each other and to feel really, really loved and to love being. And I could go home and be exhausted and tired and be with this amazing woman, and she didn't feel it. She was loved. She could see how much love there was in what I did, and it wasn't translating for her. And I went and abstracted my mind and read the Red Pill and MGTOW and all those things and thought about love as economics, and it didn't make me a better husband. And so she waited and waited and waited, and she had 3 beautiful babies with me, and she couldn't wait any longer for me to show the same love for her that I showed in those events, that I showed to those jumps. And so on January 29th this year, she asked to be divorced. And I knew that I had to confront things that were real, that were too scary for me to be willing to confront up until that moment. So I agreed to separate. And a week and a half later, I was going to leave the house. So we had a talk before I was going to leave the house. And I lay down on this pillow in our living room, and I started weeping. And I wept, and I wept, and I had never had the sounds that came out of me on that day come out of me before. And as I was weeping, there was this move where it went from being about what I was losing in my relationship with my wife and how scared I was for my children, to, for the first time, fully confronting how painful my experience of being sexually abused was. Because I was sexually abused by my mentor from the time I was 12 until I was 19. And so I got to feel it for the first time. My body said, okay, you have to confront this now. You have to feel it. And so I happen to be good friends with John Vervaeke, who's been a great ally to me, and he's talked about internal family systems therapy and somatic therapy and psychedelic therapy. And I conceived this plan to go do all of them, and I talked to John, and he recommended how to do that. And so for 6 weeks, I did internal family systems therapy 6 days a week, and I did somatic therapy once a week, and then I went and did an MDMA therapy session. And on the way through that, I called my mom every day, and I talked to her about what was happening. And one day when I was calling my mom, I was laying there, and the tears came on me, and I was overwhelmed by them. And some voice inside me that I didn't completely understand came out of me and said, I need to believe. I need to believe that there's a Father in heaven who loves me. So I called Paul. And Paul said, where's God in all this? I said, well, he's knocking on the door, right? And I was supposed to go to Hawaii to heal and give Beth some space. And I tried to go to Hawaii, and when I tried to drive from the place I was staying to the airport, I had a panic attack, and I turned around and drove to my family homestead, and I slept there. I I woke up the next morning and I walked up to this waterfall that is a few miles from our family homestead, and it was a great place of pilgrimage for me as a child. And I sat down and I prayed in front of the waterfall. And I asked Christ to come in and show me that I was loved. And I felt this thing come into me and shake me, and it was this wounding gaze. It was not comfortable. It was not easy. It didn't feel great. But I felt loved. And I put my arms out in front of this waterfall and I said, if I have to bear this cross to wash away the sins that have been passed down to me, I'll choose to bear it. I choose to bear it. I'll go in with it. So I started praying every day. And I showed up at my MDMA therapy session. I sat there and they asked me to remember in the intensity of the experience that the ground is always underneath me and God is always available to me. And they asked me if I believed in God. And I said, I'm a Christian. It was still a really surprising thing for me to say. It's still a surprising thing for me to say. I swear it's like my right brain is definitely Christian at this stage and my left brain is still really not sure. And I don't know if that'll ever change, but I just know that the right brain is what's taking me where I need to go. And so I took 185 milligrams of MDMA and I sat and they put a blindfold on me. And I started to shake. And I started to go like this with my hands and I started to scream, no, 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 no. And I started to curse. And then when I came down, I started to say, Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. And it led me into prayer. And I started to recite Psalm 23. And I got to go through every emotion that I had suppressed of shame and disgust and pain and rage and desire to run away. I just processed that for 4 hours and I tremored when I had one therapist in with me and one therapist outside. When the second therapist came in, he said, it smells like an exorcism here. According to my Fitbit, I ran 6 miles in those 4 hours. And it was really, really painful and really, really scary. And I kept telling myself the pain is good. I accept the pain is showing me what I need to see. And when I came out of the experience, I could only remember the pain at first. It wasn't until the therapist read back to me the things that I had said that I got to remember the other moments. So there's this moment. At first, my hands would go like this, and I would scream, no, 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 no. And at first, sometimes I was like running away, and then sometimes I was lunging forward with anger. And she asked me to put my hands somewhere I needed love, and I put my hands over my genitals. And then I started to go into the tremors, and then I started to push something away and said, no, no, don't touch me there, don't touch me there, that's my soul, don't touch me there. And I started to run. I'm running away. And then I came out of it. And I said, it was all for you, Beth. It was always all for you. And for the first time, I heard the music that I had set to play during the whole thing. And it was an acoustic cover of Stand By Me. And I asked, what's that song? What's that song? And so I lay there and I sang that song. And I knew then without a shadow of a doubt that in the deepest pit of my soul that I was meant to be with my wife. You know, I would pray after that and I would say, I'm not going to ask to reunite with her because I don't think prayer works like that. But I'm going to ask for the best in how we can love each other. But then I would say, let it be thy will. If it be thy will, if it be thy will, because what God has put together, let no man sunder. So I came back, and Beth moved out of the house, and I moved into the house, and I took care of things, and I set my chair up every night, so if she wanted to sit down, she could sit down and talk to me. And we talked for 2 hours, and we healed a lot of things, but she didn't believe it would ever come back. And I just kept trying to show up and be a loving partner. Kept trying to say, no, I'm not going to worry about trying to be with another woman. I'm not going to worry about any of that. I'm just going to try to make sure that the woman who I love is taken care of. And So 8 more weeks passed. I went back and did a second MDMA session, and I came back and I sat with Beth for 8 hours, and she saw the change in me, and she was still so scared, but slowly she shed the fears. And when we lay together at the end of the night, she held my face and she looked at my face and she's like, how did this happen? Like, how are you here? I think is what she said. How are you here now? And I told her that Jordan Peterson showed me that you could understand the differences between men and women and not make women the enemy. And then you could aim yourself at logos and truth. And John Vervaeke showed me that agape is the highest principle that we could orient all of our quest for virtue to. And that behind them was this figure who taught us these virtues of faith and hope and love. And I read Corinthians over and over and over again. And I believe that essentially in that critical moment, my body had the faithfulness that had been cultivated by all those years of practice to choose to deal with the fear and to not run away from it. And so I had faith that the woman that I had given my life to, or tried to anyways, that she was one of the best people that I'd ever met. And that she was virtuous and kind and loving and loyal. And that if I could show her that she could have in me what she had always wanted, of course she'd want that. And so that gave me hope. And it gave me the strength to continue showing up over and over again in a loving way. And so I encountered something. I didn't tell you guys when Christ came into me at the waterfall, I felt tingling in the backs of my hands, as if I felt the ghost of the nails. And so somehow through all these experiences, I feel like I discovered that love is the highest principle. And that if you put your faith in a God that loves you, you can work miracles. I think that's where I'll stop for today.
Still I have it. There are moments I conveniently forget that I'm a 40-year-old man. The last vestiges of a ghost long dead. The ghost with the Messiah complex. A Messiah too lazy to rise or ascend. Happily hurt and hard. The hanger-on or haunting of a time past. A heroic dream of the harrowing of hell. Failure to launch. Cling to a life vest. Treading in spells that linger and last. Mom and Dad, righteous and mad. Daydreamers with ghosts of their own. My memory of them stoic, looking with aims to pretend. Always on the brink of somewhere. Each a child dancing on the fence. On down the river, dreamt in the sunshine. Saturday morning cartoons, the only Sabbath I knew. A disciple of Jim Henson and John Hughes. worship in cathedrals where the toys are us, baptized in ball pits, a clown served the sacrament we eat, more Pepsi and Pizza Hut, say please, say cheese. Between Kurt Cobain, a scrambled cable screen, towers tumbling, Super Bowls, and reality TV, the ghost is constitutionally unwilling and intrinsically unable to see and be seen, searching madly for attention to seek. But you could be anything. Never say never. If you've got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing, ever. Don't talk to strangers. See what I say. Just do it. You don't listen very well, do you? You don't do very well, do you? You're not looking too good, are you? Keep up. Appearances aren't what they seem. Will you ever grow up? You look like you're stuck. I think you took too much. Echoes the ghost within the host, who prays the dead bury their dead and stay buried in a fading dream.